Prepare to have an autographical orgasm. In 3, 2, 1.
Still got another story here for you, though.
Come on, hit me with the chips.
Okay, so this one works perfectly, and I'm going to pretend I did this on purpose.
On purpose, that one.
On purpose. So this works perfectly because as of when we're recording tomorrow, I'm not sure if you're aware, is VJ Day.
No, I did not know that.
Do you know what that is? Because I didn't know that existed until today.
No.
It sounded like a sex toy to me, VJ Day.
Yeah.
But it's actually it's the date that Japan surrendered, basically.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it works perfectly because I'm about to tell you the story of Hirro Onoda.
Oh, okay. I love it. I love a good person's Japanese person named Hiro, because there was a character in Heroes called Hiro, and it always made me laugh because his name was Hiro. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know.
That was one I never got into.
Yeah.
You know. So it's the story of Hirro Onoda and how he became the soldier who carried on fighting World War II for 29 years after it had finished. So a little bit of history about him. Onoda was a Japanese citizen who was called to join the Japanese army when he was 20 years old. He was sent to Nakano School to be trained as an Imperial Army intelligence officer, where he was taught methods of gathering intelligence and how to conduct guerrilla warfare. He was being trained to go in behind enemy lines with small groups of soldiers to make life miserable for the enemies and gather intelligence in the process. So that was a general mission. On December 26, 1944, he was sent to Lubang Island in the Philippines, and his orders from his commanding officer stated, and I quote, as they say, "You are absolutely forbidden to die by your own hand. It may take 3 years, it may take 5, but whatever happens, we'll come back for you. Until then, so long as you have one soldier, you are to continue to lead him. You may have to live on coconuts. If that's the case, live on coconuts. Fair. Under no circumstances are you to give up your life voluntarily." Okay. Yeah. So
pretty solid instructions, really, isn't it?
Yeah, go there, don't leave until we tell you.
Yeah, and survive on coconuts, like Tom
Hanks coconuts
in Castaway.
I watched most of Martian earlier, and it's basically Castaway in space, isn't it?
Yeah, Castaway in space, but potatoes replace the coconuts.
Yeah. However, there were issues with some outside forces, and Inadam and his men were unable to complete many of the orders. And then on February 28th, 1945, Allied forces were able to conquer and take the island. After that battle was won, surviving Japanese soldiers would disappear and hide in the jungles on the island in small groups of 3 or 4. Most of the groups were quickly killed off. However, Inadam and his group of 3 were not. So there was him and 4 other people in the jungle at this point, his little group. There were a few other cells of groups as well, but they pretty much died off very quickly.
Yep.
Okay, so they continued to use guerrilla warfare to hold back the enemy as much as they could while strictly rationing supplies. They would also attack neighboring farms when they could to take their food and supplies. In October 1945, they came across a leaflet supposedly from the locals that said the war ended on August the 15th, come down from the mountains. The few remaining cells decided that this must be propaganda from the enemy, as they believed there was no way Japan could have lost the war in such a small time. Which, to be fair, makes sense to someone that doesn't know about the A-bombs dropping on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah, because if they're isolated away from it.
Yeah, they had no idea.
Yeah, they don't know what's going on at all. So you think, oh, my country's going strong and we're going to win this war. So
from what I remember, they were doing pretty good until like the A-bomb kind of changed everything, didn't it? So.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and it was only a matter of months from when they got sent there. So, you know. What did I get to then? I got to there, didn't I? Where's that gone? Oh, okay, yeah.
Supplies.
The few remaining cells decided that this must be propaganda from the enemies, as they believed there was no way Japan could have lost the war in such a small... Oh, wait, I just said that.
You did.
I did just say that.
Lost the war in such a small time. That's the bit you said, I think.
It's really important that I had to say it again.
Very.
Near the end of that same year, the This is why I don't drink before I talk.
I
have a hard enough time talking when I'm sober. God gracious me with a tiny tongue. Near the end of the same year, the locals, who were tired of being shot at by the soldiers from the jungle, managed to have a plane drop more leaflets to them. This time, an order to stand down was included in print by their original commanding officer. The remaining cells of soldiers once again scrutinised the leaflets, and in the end, they decided the wording seemed fishy, and that it seemed that it seemed to imply that Japan lost the war, which could never have happened.
Yeah.
Couldn't happen. They couldn't. Literally says here, it was something they could not comprehend.
No.
They believed it was the Allies, tired of their guerrilla tactics, trying to trick them into surrender.
Okay. I suppose you would, though, if you're confident your country's going in strong.
Yeah.
Someone comes along and says, "Oh, it's over, lads." You'd be like, "Ah, no, it's not."
And this is only 1945 as well. So this is still October 1945, so the same year, ain't it?
Yeah.
Okay, when that didn't work, more leaflets and other materials are dropped, including newspaper clippings, photographs and letters from loved ones. And also delegates were sent in from Japan to walk through the jungle and communicate this message over a loudspeaker. However, every time the cells of soldiers found something suspicious about whatever evidence was put in front of them, they were getting a bit more paranoid by this point, which, once again, I understand.
Yeah.
You know. They continued on with the mission, and even when everyone they encountered were wearing civilian clothing, they assumed this must be another elaborate ploy to trick them by the Allies. They considered the fact that every time they fired on the civilians, surely thereafter search parties would arrive hunting them. And they also decided the delegates being sent in were Japanese prisoners being forced to go in there and try and flush them out.
Right.
Which I get. I get it, but it's a bit like, okay.
Come on, guys. It's over now. Come on. Get out.
But they don't know still, but this carries on for about another 5 years, though.
5 years. So we get
they
get to 1950 and they still think the walls are
49. Yeah.
49. Okay.
Actually, yeah, it's 4 years. That's a good point.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I'm sure I failed maths.
I'm going by what they said. Don't blame me. I didn't fail maths. I got a C.
Yeah, you got better. I didn't even get a score, Carl. So you did better than me.
I only got a C because the teacher did all my coursework for me.
Good man.
Yeah, man. So after about 5 years of this, one of the four in Onoda's group decided to surrender, but didn't tell the other three. He slipped away from the others and then spent a further 6 months in the jungle on his own. I'm guessing trying to find his way out of the jungle. Yeah. I don't know. Doesn't really say what he was doing in that time. But he eventually surrendered to who he believed to be Allied troops. And due to this event, Onoda's cell, their group, became even more cautious and paranoid because they saw it as a security risk, because they could have been captured, could have been telling them where they were. So I guess they probably moved as well.
Fair. Mm-hmm. I just don't get the thinking of that, though. Like, is this 5 years after the war had ended?
Yeah.
That it happened. So he goes out into the jungle and then he surrenders and says, I was a part of the Japanese side.
Yeah.
Well, just say I was just having a little wander and I got lost in the jungle. Can someone help me find my way home? You wouldn't surrender, would you?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if he might have just at the same time been thinking that they might not be. He might have just been a bit, you've been in there for 5 years. I can imagine you're not in your best frame of mind,
Yeah.
And they used, like Japan as well. I know with the kamikaze pilots, they used to dose them up like crazy. A lot of like the armies did in World War II, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of thing like that as well, involved. But that's all from him. So that's the last you hear from him. But obviously they were worried of security threat, etc. Skip forward then another 5 years.
Yeah.
And another one of the group was killed during a skirmish on the beach at Gontin, and now there was only 2 of them left.
Okay, so would this be 1954 or 55 now? Where are we?
Yeah, this would have been around 1954, so not 5 years on yet.
Yeah.
So it doesn't go. There was not a lot of detail about what that skirmish was exactly, but from what they've said, a lot of the times, because they start shooting on civilians so much, the civilians ended up obviously shooting back on them. getting rid of them. They were tired of being shot at, understandably.
Yeah, makes sense.
And they thought all the people they saw were troops, Skip forward now for another 17 years.
17 years.
For another 17 years, those two, Onoda and the other guy, I think it was Kazuki, if I remember. The two lived in the jungle and continued their mission, gathering intelligence wherever possible and attacking what they considered to be Allied troops whenever the opportunity arose. They still believed that Japan would eventually send more troops that they could train in guerrilla warfare, and then with the intelligence they're still gathering, they would retake the island from the Allied forces. This is generally what they believe still at this point. So, 27 years after?
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, because after all, the commanding officer stated to them, no matter what, they were going to physically come and get them.
Yeah. Especially if they were probably quite young then as well, weren't they? So.
Oh yeah, he was 20 when this started.
Being of that age.
Yeah.
You take on board whatever your commander says to you. So
exactly, you just, and even back then it was more traditional and
definitely.
Just said he was 20 when he got taken to there. It doesn't actually 20. Say.
Yep.
Yeah, but it doesn't say when he got sent to the island or how old he was then. Just 20 when he originally joined the army.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So that was 27 years. So that would have been when. Okay, this is it actually. So October 1972, after 27 years of hiding, Onada's only remaining soldier that I mentioned, Kazuki, I believe his name was as well, as someone else mentioned later, was killed during a fight with a Filipino patrol because it was in a Philippine island. So
right,
yeah, he was in Filipino patrol by this point. Again, I imagine prior to this, the Japanese government had long thought that both of them must be dead. Because 17 years after they'd last, specifically seen them.
Yeah.
Didn't think anyone could survive that long. However, they now realise that there was every possibility that Onoda may also still be alive because they've also now got the body of Kazuki or Suzuki, one of them. So after this, they sent in search parties to try and find Onoda into the jungle. However, after 27 years, he had become pretty good at hiding and they were never able to find him, and he still continued to resume his mission on his own for another 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so now it's 1974 at this point then. So in 1974, a college student named Nario Suzuki, so no relation to the other dude, but decided to travel the world. He just didn't say where he was originally from, actually. I might have seen that, but I'm not too sure. But I think he might have been Japanese, actually, going by the name, thinking about it now.
Yeah,
makes more sense.
Probably would be.
But I don't know where he lived, though,
That's fine.
So 1974, a college student named Nario Suzuki decided to travel the world. He stated that during his travels, he had a list of things he wanted to find: a panda, an abominable snowman, and an Onoda.
Oh, okay.
Which is a weird thing to want to go and do in 1974.
Depending on where you're from, I suppose if he was Japanese, he probably thought Onoda as some sort of legend.
It must have been a legend by then,
or a myth, or there's no one really living in there. Is there sort of kind of crossed his mind, that kind of thing? That's what people would have said, and then maybe he thought, yes, there is. I'm going to go find him.
Yeah, and I suppose it would have popped up in the last 2 years. Also, even if he was thinking about it before, and then in 1972 when they saw the other guy, they were like, "Oh, he might still be there." He was like, "Okay, I'm on this."
Yep, that's it.
Fair enough. Whatever. I mean, I'd go look for Bigfoot, and I don't even believe in Bigfoot.
I mean, out of the three, you're more likely to see a panda, though, aren't you?
You'd have thought.
Yeah. I like how he picked one of the most easiest things that you could see, because there must have been around in zoos at this point,
especially in Asia as well. This is going on in Asia.
Yeah, exactly.
They're a lot more prevalent over there.
Fair enough, though. That's
free
thing. Yeah.
So he travelled to the island, and I forget now the name of it. Lulang, was it something like that? I said. Where was it? I've got it here. Where was it? I don't need to look, but I want to know now. Where the heck was it? Lubang.
So on the island of Lubangi.
Go back to where I was. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So he travelled to the island, presumably after failing to find a Yeti, and walked through the jungle looking for any signs of Onoda. So this was something that thousands of people before him had tried to do, like all these search parties we mentioned just over the past 2 years. That's going to be hundreds probably. I mean, all the Japanese people, the delegates they sent over near the beginning, there was all the people around, civilians that went in looking for them. Everyone else had gone in looking for him. No one was able to find him. However, this random student managed to do what none of them were able to do, and actually found not only his dwelling, but also he was in there himself, Onoda.
Finally.
I'm shocked that he didn't just attack him or something after all this time.
Some random guy, he could have been anybody.
Yeah.
And he's been sitting in the same place, probably hiding around, different places for all those years. Some random guy approaches him. All right, legend.
And you can't imagine he's in the best mental space either, like him being
not
sitting
really.
there 29 years, the last 2 years on his own.
On his own as well, surviving on coconuts or whatever else he could find to eat,
Well, apparently that's why they kept attacking the farms. They'd take their cows and shit. That's why all the locals in the area were fucking tired of them.
Got you. Makes sense.
So then he attempted to convince Onoda to come home with him, but Onoda still refused, stating his commanding officer said they would return for him. He would not believe it was over until they returned to order him to do so. Dude was committed still after 29 years. He was still committed. After all this, they finally found him, and he was still like, no.
No.
But the student didn't want to give up there. So the student then travelled back to Japan to inform them that he had found Onoda and exactly what he had said.
Mm-hmm.
And then contact from the Japanese government was made with Onoda's original commanding officer, who was still alive, now retired and working at a bookstore, who was then, taken to the island. They were able to find him, and he told him that they had lost the war and he should now give up his weapons and surrender to the Filipinos. He listened. The issue was, during the time, he had killed 30 Filipinos and injured over 100 others, as well as destroying numerous crops for the past 3 decades. So a lot of people would have probably died or suffered from those crops as well.
Yeah, not in there. Yeah,
because bear in mind, they were not only looking for evidence and robbing stuff for food for themselves, but also trying to mess with everyone else as much as possible. So they probably burnt loads of food too, or something.
Yeah, of course,
which killed more. The fact that he had done all this and wasted the last 29 years of his life was a crushing blow for the soldier. There's actually a quote here from what he said in between that time after finding out and when stopping. Quote, we really lost the war. How could they have been so sloppy? Suddenly everything went back. A storm raged inside of me. I felt like a fool for having been so tense and cautious on the way here. Worse than that, what had I been doing all these years? Gradually, the storm subsided, and for the first time, I really understood. My 30 years as a guerrilla fighter to the Japanese army were abruptly finished. This was the end. I pulled back the bolt of my rifle and unloaded the bullets. I eased off the pack that I always carried with me and laid the gun on top of it. Would I really have no use for the rifle that I had polished and cared for like a baby all these years? Or Kazuka's rifle, which I had hidden in the crevice in the rocks? Had the war really ended 30 years ago? If it had, what had my other soldiers died for? If what was happening was true, wouldn't it be better if I had died with them?
Interesting. I like that, man. That's I just can't believe he stuck to his commander's word though, didn't he? So
yeah, man, he proper honor, isn't it? Like that kind of Japanese culture.
Definitely, man. And I take it, so he eventually gave up.
He did. He gave up and did that. He surrendered himself. On March 10th, 1975, at age 52. Wow. I know that in full uniform that he had managed to keep in immaculate condition, someone stated, and they have no idea how. Walked out of the jungle. He'd already left his gun and stuff behind, but then he walked out of the jungle, surrendered his samurai sword to the Filipino president, who was there to greet him.
Fair. So
Yeah, man.
after that point, did he like?
Wow.
Was he apprehended
The-
and
The
kept away?
president,
Yeah.
the Filipino president, then did something that was met with animosity in the Philippines, but celebrated in Japan. He excused Onoda of all his crimes, as he truly believed he was still at war the entire time.
That's brilliant.
That's fair, really.
Do you know when the statute of limitations kick in for like murder and stuff?
In America, there isn't a statute of limitations on murder.
No, but in certain areas there are, aren't there?
So, I don't know. I don't know.
It exists, right?
Statute of limitations exists, but I don't know if it does for murder in most places. It probably does in some. But...
Yeah, I can't remember what it's for now, but
it's because it's classed for him. They're saying that it was like wartime the whole time. So if anyone was to blame, it should have been his commanding officers, but not.
Fair enough. Yeah,
because he wasn't even dead. When I was reading this, I was like, "Well, he must be dead. That's why he hasn't gone back to him." But no, he's just fucking retired in a bookstore. Like, go and get your guy. What the hell?
The commander,
the original
retired.
Commanding officer, that sent him there in the first place, just said, "I will come and get you and tell you when to come home." Which is still a bookstore.
That's ridiculous.
They just gloss over that in every report of the story I've seen as well.
Wow, that's ridiculous. Does Onoda have a happy life after? Does he settle down?
Well, Onoda eventually returned to Japan, but was unhappy that the country had changed so much in the 3 decades, and he felt that a lot of the Japanese traditional virtues had been forgotten. He said that in his view, Japan now kowtowed to the rest of the world and had lost its pride and sense of itself. He shortly thereafter moved to Brazil and bought a ranch with the military back pay he received upon returning to Japan, and then got married.
Oh, fair play to him.
Yeah. So he got back pay for that time as well, which fair as well. If you're stating, you were at war the whole time, then he would also be due military back pay. So that makes sense. And he stayed there for so when was this originally? The last time, 1975 was when he left. He stayed in Brazil then after going there until 1984. However, in 1984, after reading of a murder that had taken place in Japan, consisting of a child killing their own parents, he became even more distressed at the state of his country and decided to move back to Japan. Once back in Japan, he opened a nature school for young people where he could teach them survival techniques, how to be independent, and, as he stated, just how to be all around better Japanese citizens.
Yeah.
And that actually, there's a lot of reports of people that did that and said how much it helped them, and he lived until the old age of 91 and died on January 16th, 2014.
Oh, wow. So, like 6 years ago.
Yeah, long life, man.
Yeah, 91. Fair play to him.
Not the ending I expected when I started reading this.
What was that, sorry?
Not the ending I expected when I started reading this.
Yeah, I when you were going with it, I thought he was going to be like murdered by someone, or I don't know,
or go terrorist.
Yeah, or just not be
go
found.
big crazy.
Just not be found, like an unsolved, that kind of legends or myth or of
just disappeared.
Yeah,
it's really nice though. I like that ending. I really like that ending. It made me feel a bit warm and fuzzy that like he was just going back and wanted to give back to him, and
yeah, that's good. It's nice.
I thought you were going to be.
Well,
I thought he was going to be a crazy killer in the end.
Well, yeah, he could have been. It could have turned out a lot worse for him. So
considering he still must have had, and then he got. I'm guessing probably like getting married and having the quiet family life probably helped. After he got away with it all. Surprisingly, it turned out that way.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I suppose he helped a lot of people after as well. But did he have any kids, or was it just a wife that he had?
That's a question. I think he did, but I'm not completely sure.
Yeah. I mean, he was quite old when he got out of the army, so to speak.
It really surprised me when I saw that. He lived until 2016, because I think you just forget how recent World War II was.
Yeah. Well, it's like 70 years, isn't it? So over 70 years.
Yeah. Weird, man.
So no, that's again. I need a film about this now, Carl. We need to write to people and get a film made about his life.
We need to make this happen.